you remember Julio César Chávez?
Lightweight champion of the world, Julio César Chávez.
The Mexican boxing legend? The guy who dominated the ring for over a decade.
Chavez reminds me of a surgeon. I mean, he looks like he knows precisely what...
With an unbeaten streak that seemed endless.
Mexico's Julio César Chávez.
Julio César Chávez.
Julio César Chávez.
Think back to 1990. Chávez just pulled off one of the most dramatic last-second knockouts ever against Meldrick Taylor. The crowd's going wild, chanting his name. He's at the top of his game. But here's the thing. Sometimes the toughest fights happen outside the ring. What happens when you've conquered the boxing world, but there's still a battle inside you? Today, we're looking beyond the belts and glory to uncover the man behind the myth. We're talking about the Lion of Culiacan, a fighter who roared in the ring like no other. But even the strongest have their weak spots, right? So what happened to our champion after that incredible night in 1990? How did the unbeatable Chávez end up facing the fight of his life? Stay tuned, because this story's about to take some wild turns you won't see coming. Born in 1962 in Ciudad Obregón, Sonora, this kid grew up dirt poor. We're talking a family of 10, squeezed into an old railroad car in Culiacan, Mexico. That's where our champ's story kicks off. Chávez wasn't your average poor kid. He was the kind of poor that makes you wonder how people get by. But they did, and young Julio watched his mom work her fingers to the bone every day. Ironing, washing, scrubbing, whatever it took to feed her hungry kids. One day, seeing his mom slave away, Chávez made a promise that changed everything. "Mom," he said, "I'm going to get you a house someday. You won't have to do this anymore." Right there in that beat-up train car, a fighter was born. So how does a kid with nothing become something? For Chávez, it ran in the family. His big brothers boxed, so he followed their lead. While other kids played in the streets, Chávez was at the gym, throwing punches and dreaming big. Sure, lots of kids have dreams, but him? He had that extra something. Fire in his eyes, quick on his feet, and a left hook that could knock you sideways. People started to notice. This kid was going places. And did he ever? At just 17, Chávez jumped in the ring for his first pro fight. It was March 4th, 1980, against Miguel Ruiz. Get this, he lost at first, but after they looked it over, they flipped the decision. Chávez walked away with his first win. That was only the start. He packed up and headed to Tijuana to chase his boxing dreams. No one knew it then, but this tough kid with nothing but his gloves and guts was about to become one of the best boxers ever. Some fighters are good and others are great, but Julio César Chávez was something else entirely. That skinny kid from the abandoned railroad car became more than a boxer. He became a legend. Chávez ruled 3 weight divisions: super featherweight, lightweight, and light welterweight. He wasn't just winning titles, he was changing what it meant to be a champion. His tough chin and powerful left hook scared his opponents. When Chávez entered the ring, you could feel the excitement in the air. Take his fight against Edwin Rosario in '87. Chávez was the underdog against the WBA lightweight champ. For 11 tough rounds, he wore Rosario down. Then in the 11th, bam, knockout. Another win for Chávez. But for real excitement, look at the Meldrick Taylor fight. March 17th, 1990. A day boxing fans won't forget. Taylor was winning on points, and it looked like Chávez might finally lose. With seconds left in the last round, Chávez landed a big hit. Taylor went down, and the ref stopped the fight with 2 seconds left. 2 seconds! It's the kind of comeback that still amazes people. How good was Chávez? He won 87 fights in a row. Most boxers dream of winning a dozen straight. He did that 7 times over. The Ring magazine said he was the best boxer in the world from 1990 to 1993. Not just in his weight class, the best overall. People loved him. In his 1993 fight against Greg Haugen, 136,000 fans packed the stadium in Mexico City. It wasn't just a fight, it was a huge event. And Chávez, as always, put on a show. But being the best isn't easy. All those fights and wins took their toll. Behind the fame, things were getting tough. The pressure to keep winning was building up. Chávez was about to face a fight that no training could prepare him for. Success brings its own challenges, and for Chavez, reaching the top meant facing intense pressure. Every fight, training session, and public appearance came with huge expectations. It's like having an entire nation's hopes riding on your shoulders. That's enough to make anyone crack. The physical toll was brutal. Chavez pushed his body to the limit constantly. Early mornings, late nights, tough training. It never stopped. This left little room for anything else. His personal life suffered. With all that training and fighting, when could he make time for family? Friends? Just being a regular guy? Soon cracks appeared. The unbeatable champ looked for ways to handle the stress, and he found it in alcohol. It started small, a drink here and there, just to relax after a hard day. But that's how these things go. They tend to grow into bigger problems. Take the 1987 fight against Edwin Rosario, where Chavez won the WBA lightweight title. After the crowds left and the lights went out, Chavez started drinking, and he kept going. It's pretty ironic. One of his biggest wins kicked off his toughest battle. From then on, alcohol became his constant companion. It was there for celebrations, to dull the pain of training, to help him forget the pressure. But here's the thing. The more Chavez leaned on alcohol, the more it threatened everything he'd worked for. His perfect record, his reputation, his legacy, it was all at risk, and he was in too deep to see the danger. So there he was, Julio César Chávez, the Lion of Culiacán, the undefeated champ at the top of his game. But instead of enjoying it, he was close to falling hard. His ring glory was fading, overshadowed by a new fight. Not against another boxer, but against himself. Remember Chávez's tough fights in the ring? Well, his hardest battle wasn't under those bright lights. This one happened in the shadows, away from the cheering fans and cameras. After the Rosario fight, Chávez's life took a dark turn. What started with drinking quickly became a full-blown addiction problem. Cocaine came into the picture, and soon the boxing champ was struggling just to keep it together beyond the ring. You know how boxers always talk about their intense training? Early runs, tough sparring, strict diets. Well, Chávez's routine looked nothing like that anymore. His new training partners were bottles and lines of white powder, and it showed. The guy who used to move like a cat in the ring got slow and clumsy. Those quick reflexes? Gone. Fans started to notice. Commentators whispered. Chavez didn't seem so unbeatable anymore. His public image took a big hit too. Those friendly post-fight chats turned into a mess of slurred words and weird behavior. People talked about his drinking and how he acted after losing fights. The hero was falling and falling hard. Every day was a risk for Chavez. He came close to losing everything more than once. Think about it. One of Mexico's biggest stars trying to buy drugs without getting caught. It's amazing he didn't end up in jail or worse. Chavez was stuck. The pressure to seem perfect pushed him deeper into drugs. And the more drugs he did, the harder it was to keep up that perfect image. It was a nasty cycle that just kept getting worse. How did he hide it for so long? When you're on top, people often miss what's really going on. His success covered up his problems. And let's be real, boxing isn't exactly a world where you can easily admit you need help. After trying and failing to get clean a few times, Chavez finally hit bottom. Whatever happened then, it made him realize he needed help. It was his wake-up call, a moment of clarity in all that mess. That's when his toughest fight started. Not in the ring, but in rehab. The road ahead was long and hard with no sure win. But if Chavez knew how to do one thing, it was fight. And this time, he was fighting for his life. Getting back up when your mind is throwing the punches is tough, but that's exactly what Chavez faced when he decided to tackle his addiction. The boxing champ now found himself in the fight of his life, with no bell to save him. His journey to sobriety was like a brutal boxing match, full of ups and downs. He'd go to rehab determined to change, only to relapse weeks later. It was a cycle of hope and disappointment, each setback hitting hard. For Chavez, it was like learning to box all over again, every day a new round to win. And his family and friends? The trust he'd broken wasn't easy to fix. Think about trying to convince your loved ones you're really going to change this time when they've heard it before. He had to prove himself not just in rehab, but to the people who mattered most. His legacy took a hit too. All those amazing achievements in the ring, the undefeated streak, the world titles, risked being overshadowed by his struggles outside the ropes. People wondered, would Chávez be remembered as a boxing great or as another star who burned out too soon? But champions don't stay down. Just when it looked like Chávez was out for good, he found a second win. He dug deep for one more push. It took several tries before he finally got sober for good. It wasn't quick or easy. It was a long, tough process that tested all of his willpower. In the end, Chávez showed he was as tough outside the ring as in it. As he rebuilt his life, he realized his biggest fight was just starting. He wanted to use what he'd been through, all the pain, struggle, and hard-earned wisdom, to help others battling addiction. The champ was ready to fight again, this time for something bigger than any title. Here's the really cool part. Chávez has opened several drug rehab clinics in Mexico. These aren't just for show, they're serious operations. We're talking full treatment programs, therapy, support groups, everything people need to get better. And it's working. Hundreds of people have turned their lives around thanks to these clinics. What makes his work special is how personal it is. When he shares his story, he doesn't hold back. He talks about the lowest points, the struggles, all of it. And people connect with that. It shows them that recovery isn't some far-off dream. It's something they can do too. Looking at Chávez's journey, from boxing champ to rock bottom and back up again, you can see his legacy changing. It's not just about his time in the ring anymore. It's about the lives he's changing now. And honestly, this new fight might be his biggest win yet. When we talk about Chávez now, it's not all about his boxing. He's become a symbol of hope for people battling addiction. Remember when nobody talked about addiction in sports? He changed that. He didn't hide his struggles. He put them out there for everyone to see. He showed that even the toughest athletes can face this challenge. What really sets Chávez apart is what he did after getting clean. He took all that drive he had in the ring and used it to help others. Think about how many people he's helped. How many found hope because he shared his story. He isn't sitting back now. He's still fighting, but in a different way. Every day he works on his own recovery, but he's also giving others the tools to fight addiction. He says, I want to help those who are struggling with addiction just like I did. When we look at Chávez's legacy now, it's about more than boxing. It's about coming back from the brink and using that experience to lift others up. And remember, Chávez is still in this fight. Addiction doesn't go away overnight. It's something you deal with every day. But he has shown he can go the distance. And now he's not just fighting for himself, he's fighting for all of us. Remember when we talked about Chávez's amazing career? His toughest fight wasn't in the ring. It was the daily battle to stay sober. And he's winning that one too. Chávez's story goes beyond boxing. It's about falling and getting back up, facing your fears head on, and using your struggles to help others. About half of the people in recovery slip up at some point. But Chávez is beating those odds, and he's helping others do the same. So when life gets tough, think of him. If he can take on addiction and come out strong, maybe you can tackle your challenges too. What do you think about Chávez's journey? Ever faced a tough battle yourself? We want to hear from you in the comments, and if you like this video, stick around. Hit subscribe for more inspiring boxing stories. See you next time.